and today we're going to be discussing the ReVel ventilator, specifically the non-positive pressure ventilation BiPAP mode. So a little background on BiPAP. It can be described as a continuous positive pressure system with a time-cycled or flow-cycled change of the applied pressure by using PEEP. Delivers a preset inspiratory positive airway pressure, or IPAP, and an expiratory positive airway pressure, or EPAP, by applying PEEP. There are several patient presentations that will alter how BiPAP is applied. Patients who exhibit hypoxemic respiratory failure or failure caused by decreased blood oxygen levels, typically you're going to start with the facility-provided settings. If those initial settings do not provide the expected response of increased oxygenation, or SpO2, you want to increase the EPAP by increments of 2 centimeters of water with each adjustment. It's important to keep the gradient between the IPAP and EPAP the same. For example, if your settings are 12/4, the gradient would be 8. So increasing the IPAP to 14 would require increasing the EPAP to 6. For a hypercapnic respiratory failure patient, the goal is to improve tidal volume, or VT, and the minute ventilation, or VE. A wider gradient may be used for this. If the response of decreased carbon dioxide is not achieved, you want to increase the gradient between IPAP and EPAP, always keeping the EPAP lower, as this allows for easier exhalation and exhalation pressures. Last, a big concern for transporting patients on BiPAP is the oxygen consumption. The ReVel ventilator allows you to conserve oxygen consumption by turning down the bias flow to a minimum of 3 liters per minute. So bias flow is the flow through the circuit during exhalation, and most ventilators use flow as the trigger for the ventilation. In BiPAP, there is no need to have bias flow active, as it's mainly used to provide inspiratory pressure during ventilation with a controlled expiratory effort. By turning the bias flow down, the ventilator will cut off the FiO2. This will significantly reduce oxygen consumption. Another important note is that the ReVel ventilator uses additive values. This means that the pressure support is in addition to the PEEP, or it's PEEP compensated, whereas standalone ventilators use absolute values, which means the IPAP and EPAP are separate and not in addition to each other, or not PEEP compensated. So BiPAP uses 2 distinct pressures. The IPAP, which is the driving force, helps to reduce PaCO2 levels, and EPAP, which like CPAP uses PEEP, it helps to recruit alveoli and decrease preload and reduce shunting. It's important that you use a non-vented face or nasal mask with no valves or openings in the circuit. This will help reduce leaks, which is the most common issue with BiPAP on the ReVel ventilator. One way to help reduce this is to either increase the bias flow, or which should help with reducing leak alarms. So we're going to turn our vent on. Okay, and then we're going to go to new patient, select. We're going to go to our patient size, and we're going to choose an adult. And at this point, we're going to switch to NPPV. Now, you'll see at this point it brings up the IPAP. If you scroll through, it'll allow you to change each of the individual settings. We're going to start with the IPAP. For this scenario, we're going to use settings of 12/4. So I'm going to hit select while IPAP is highlighted in the field, and you will see that the default settings are 16, and here in the pressure support field it reads 10, and the PEEP field reads 6. So So again, because these are additive values, the IPAP on the ReVel ventilator is the combination of the pressure support setting and the PEEP setting to get you to your IPAP setting. So we're going to use 12, so I'm going to turn this down. Now you can see the IPAP reads 12 up in the display. However, down in pressure support, it's reduced to 6. 6 plus 6, so 6 pressure support, 6 PEEP equals 12 for our IPAP. I'm going to hit enter or select, and then I'm going to switch to my EPAP. My EPAP is defaulting to 6, and what I want to do is change it to 4. So I'm going to hit select so that it highlights the PEEP field. And now I'm going to turn it down to 4. Now you're going to see it reads 4 on the EPAP value in the display. It reads 4 in the PEEP field on the control area, but the pressure support, which is dimmed out, has actually gone up to 8. Again, 8 plus 4 is 12. Because it's additive, it needs to equal out. So we're going to hit select, and then we're going to go to our rate. So on BiPAP, we have to set a rate. We're going to use 12 just to keep things simple. You could change it to whatever the settings are provided by the facility. And then we're going to go to ventilate, and then you're going to hit select. I'm going to turn the pressure alarms off just so we don't have to deal with those. You can adjust your FiO2 levels to achieve a minimum of 94% SpO2. Now, as I mentioned, one of the main issues we typically encounter is the leak alarms. So one of the things you can do is change the bias flow, which is a compensation for the amount of air in the circuit. One of the other changes you will need to make for BiPAP is the flow termination. For BiPAP, it's typically 40%. However, the ReVel ventilator defaults to 25%. So what we need to do is access the extended menus. We do that by holding the select button down. Okay, and now we're in the extended menus. We want to scroll to vent control, hit select, and then we want to find the flow term. And then as you can see, the flow termination is defaulted to 25%. We want to turn the knob until it's 40, hit select. Now, one of the other items that you want to change is we're going to get to time termination, and we're going to go into this. So what we want to do is we want to match the time termination, which defaults to 2 in the extended settings, but under the NPPV settings, it shows up as 1. We want to match these 2 times. So let's go back into our extended settings. And then we're going to turn this down till it equals 1 and hit select. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one of the other ways, specifically with BiPAP, is the bias flow. So it's set at 5. Most of these settings, the vent settings, you want to actually turn this up to compensate for the amount of pressures in the circuit. However, because we're only really dealing with the inspiratory pressures, we're not as concerned as the expiratory. We want to turn the bias flow down. What this will do is help us to conserve oxygen in cases where you're doing a long transport, and you have concerns about oxygen consumption, depending on the rate and the other values. So we're going to turn this down to 3, which is the minimum that the vent will allow you to set it at. So as you can see, our pressure support is 8, our PEEP is 4, so it's 12, and then our EPAP, which is also PEEP, is 4. And again, you can see here under the breath mode, it's showing as AC, and the breath type is listed as pressure. And then down here, you can see the NPPV light is illuminated. So that's pretty much it for BiPAP. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.